Hey the people, how you doing? So, today we have our final photography comparison for the X60 Pro Plus. Now, it's been pretty damn impressive up until now, so let's see how well the X60 can compare to the iPhone 12. And the iPhone 12 so far has got cameras that many people find to be like the one that nails basics. So let's see how well the X60 can fare. So for our very first image right here, it's a pretty simple one, as you can see. Not very difficult, and both of these surprisingly have very similar colors and white balance and stuff like that. It's almost identical except for the little bit of extra colors and pop in the shadows for the X60. Maybe the only thing that I feel at least is better on the X60, otherwise it's essentially a tie. But that isn't the case when it comes to the ultra wide cameras, because in this case, for some weird reason, the iPhone just decided to completely blow out every single highlight. Like, everything is gone. Even the building in the background is not visible. Only the leaves are. That is just astounding. I don't know why the iPhone does this. It has done this before as well. It has no regular pattern so far as I've seen. It just happens at some point. I don't like it. That much I can tell you right now. The X60 by far takes a win in this regard. Now how about high resolution? Well, only the X60, as you'd expect, has a 50 megapixel mode here. It's pretty good to have such a mode, but you do lose out on some dynamic range if you were to use the 50 megapixel mode. The iPhone, on the other hand, it's not perfect. It's not exactly that much better in terms of dynamic range, and colors I do prefer on the X60. It's a lot more natural. The warmth is well maintained. The details, however, upon cropping in quite a bit, it's hard to distinguish. It may be the fact that I used a harsh lighting condition like this one here, which is why we don't have all that detail preservation that you'd usually see with high-res modes on the X60. But even so, I gotta say the iPhone is doing a very good job with details. It's definitely pulling its own weight right there. The processing is doing some real magic here. As for the ultra-wide, well, here you can also get 48 megapixel images on the X60. The iPhone, on the other hand, it's obviously capped out at 12 megapixels, but it does come with a slightly wider field of view, so that is something you want to keep in mind. Nonetheless, once again, colors are way better and way more accurate, not to mention a lot more pleasing on the X60. As for details, upon zooming in once again, yeah, it's not a huge difference, to be honest. If anything, it almost feels like the iPhone has better details. I don't know why, but the X60 is clearly not doing a particularly good job in this case, at least. It may be, once again, the backlit situation here, but yeah, I'm not really impressed with how the X60 is handling this high-res shot. But what is impressive on the X60 is the fact that we have some tremendously good versatility. This right here is a 2x zoom shot, and it is a telephoto zoom on the X60. I know you can get 2x telephoto on the 12 Pro and 2.5 times on the Pro Max, but those are way more expensive compared to the X60 even. But even so, you actually get a 32 megapixel 2x zoom on the X60, which means you can take high-res zoom shots here. You might wonder that 32 megapixels is not a huge difference. Well, I'd beg to differ, because at least in this even lighting situation, you can see just how much detail preservation is present on the 32 megapixel shot. So yeah, I guess if you want to use high-res modes and all that, definitely use it in even lighting. If it's backlit or there's way too much contrast that needs to be handled in the shot, then you'd be better off with the normal 12 megapixel shots. Now of course, we also have 5x periscope zoom on the X60. Is the reason why I said it has tremendous versatility. I mean, it's nice to have 5x zoom, but it's not particularly high quality. I say that because there are many other cameras out there with much higher resolution and higher quality sensors that can give you better details and stuff like that. The 8 megapixel sensor on the X60 is just not that good. But anywho, let us move on to probably the harshest condition in the entire camera comparison, which is also a very obvious one. And here, well, on one hand, the iPhone is giving us slightly better exposure in the shadows with more light and all that. The colors, however, are definitely better on the X60, a lot more natural. As for highlight control, that is also definitely better on the X60. It's not nearly as blown out as the iPhone. So overall, I do prefer the way the X60 looks here. As for the ultra-wide, in the similar conditions, well, I think this time around the X60 is producing a more balanced shot. It's got very good highlight control, as you can see right there, but it's also producing some amazing details in the shadows, and the overall detail and sharpness of the shot itself, that is also slightly better on the X60. So yeah, overall I'm gonna go with the X60 here. And did I mention the colors also look better on the X60? Man, the X60 is on a roll. That is until we come over to the human subject side of things. Well, here I guess it was bound to happen, because the X60, it's pretty good compared to many other smartphones, but compared to the iPhones, which somewhat specialize in maintaining good human subjects and portrait photographs, it's gonna fall behind a little. Because right here you can see the highlights are not nearly as well controlled. It was obviously a hard situation, that's just how I roll. But anyways, yeah, I think the iPhone is definitely gonna take a win here. It's also got really nice skin tones. Now moving on, this is a 2x zoom portrait, and I took the shot outdoors just to get a bunch of bokeh in the background. And as you can see, the biotar effect, when switched on, it can give you some pretty sick looking shots right there. I mean, that looks pretty stylized, and I'm kind of liking the look of that. But otherwise, overall, I actually prefer the X60 shot here. It's got a little bit more red in my skin, but it's also got much better highlight control. So in this case, it's actually doing a better job. Now here's another portrait shot, again outdoors, and this time with 1x zoom on both of these phones. I gotta say, the effect just feels a little bit overbearing here. You can obviously adjust the magnitude of the effect if that is something you're interested in. As for skin tones, I do think it is once again better and much more accurate on the iPhone. So it would appear that skin tones, at least for me, it works out the best with the iPhone. Now as for night mode portraits, now this feature is present in the 12 Pro and Pro Max, but the iPhone 12, the base iPhone 12 doesn't have it. And obviously, so the X60 is gonna do a better job compared to the iPhone 12. The 12 Pro or Pro Max would have stood a better chance here at least. Now let us move on to selfies. Well, in this case, the only thing that I like most about the X60 is that it has very accurate white balance. Like if you look at the white in the background, it looks perfectly like it did at the moment I took the photograph. It's really good. But otherwise, I actually like the iPhone better because it's got much better highlight control, and that, once again, it's like one of the things that the iPhones are tremendously good at. When there's a lot of highlights on your face, you can count on iPhones to handle it better than almost any other smartphone out there. So how about a selfie in medium lighting? There's a portrait selfie, and well, the X60 isn't bad. It obviously isn't blowing out any highlights because there aren't many out there, but even so, I'm gonna go with the iPhone once again. It's just got so accurate and so good skin tones. Like it's really something. When it comes to skin, you're gonna get consistently better skin tones, at least so far as I've seen in this comparison on the iPhone. A night mode selfie, well, this feature is present on both of them, but both are pretty damn terrible at them, as it would appear, because on one hand there's the iPhone, ton of noise, just not bright enough as you can see, and the skin tones are very off. There's too much red in there, it's just not good. On the other hand, we have the X60, overexposed and full of smoothing. There's less noise obviously, but yeah, it's not pretty on either. Now before we move on to rear camera night modes, there is one feature that has slowly creeped up to be one of my favorites on almost any of the other smartphones out there. It's the macro mode, and I think it's about time that iPhones also got a macro mode, because if you think about it, almost every other competitor out there, Android competitor that is, say the best from Samsung, the best from OnePlus, the best from Vivo even right here, well, they've all got some or the other kind of macro modes, and very high quality ones like this right here. I think iPhones will need a macro mode soon enough. Alright, for night mode, now this isn't particularly low light. It is low enough for both these cameras to use night mode, but it isn't terrible. Even then, I do feel like the X60 is doing a better job. The only place where the iPhone is gonna take a lead, however, is that it is maintaining the overall white balance just slightly better. The X60 is shifting a bit more on the warm side, you can look at the table, but that's about the only complaint. Otherwise, I definitely prefer the X60. As for our ultra-wide camera, well, yeah, ultra-wide night mode on the iPhone it's pretty terrible compared to the X60 at least, because the iPhone, it cannot produce any good details. Instead, it just gives us a ton of noise and grains in there. You can see right here, it's not even a huge crop. And even then, there's this absolute ton of noise, and compared to that, the X60 is clean. Is the reason why I feel like if there's any place that the iPhones require an upgrade pronto, is the ultra-wide night mode. And also the selfie night mode, just to put things together. Anyways, this right here is the styles presets that we get for the X60 Pro Plus with night mode. And the reason it's so good is because it comes coupled with night mode's clean photographs. So right here you're looking at the blue ice filter, which as the name explains is gonna keep the blue and just shove everything else out. Then we have the black and orange, which does the exact opposite. And then we have the teal and orange. It's probably one of my favorites, and it's been like that right back when I used the X50 Pro last year. So yeah, this feature right here, it's probably one of the best things that I've seen in any smartphone in a long time. Then this right here is my current favorite. This is a dark red, and if you've got the right subject, like in this case, you can get a tremendously stylized photograph right there. Like, I'm honestly speechless as to how good this one came out. Alright, now let us move on to outdoors night mode. Well, the only reason I took this is to see which one can render the skies better. Well, there are two sides to these images. Basically, the iPhone has a cleaner sky versus the color and the tone of the sky being much better and much more accurate on the X60. But the reason I'm gonna give the X60 the win here is because of all the shadow detail that it's got. There is a cyberpunk preset in there on the X60, and well, it's always intrigued me, but indoors I've never really found a good enough subject to really, make things pop like the other ones that I showed you. Outdoors, however, it seems that's what this preset was made for. Man, it looks terrific in a very good way. Now, finally, we have ultra night mode shots right here. In this case, I would say both are doing pretty well in terms of details as a whole, but the image on the X60 is so much better compared to the iPhone. The warmth that you see in the background, that is exactly how I at least wanted the image to look. I wanted that warmth to be present. It was very dim though, like both these phones had to take almost 5 seconds of exposure, I believe. You can get the idea that it was really, really low light. And of course there's a large sensor on the X60 which gives us some amazing depth of field, as you can see. The iPhone, well, at least in this image, I don't really like it, so I'm gonna go with the X60 here. For ultra low light with the ultra wide cameras, here, well, there is one place I do want to give credit to the iPhone. It is controlling the highlights better. I'm not sure how highlights even made it into this photograph given how dim everything was, but nonetheless, I do like how the iPhone is handling the highlights, but that's about the only good thing about it. Because I do believe the colors are better and more accurate on the X60, and the details and noise. Man, upon zooming in, as you can see, it's a pretty huge difference. The iPhone's ultra-wide night mode is just not good. You saw even in the previous night mode image that I showed you, there the light wasn't terribly low. It's a perfectly good condition for using night mode, and even then we had a similar type of noise and just a terrible loss in detail. So overall, I think the best way we can put it is that the X60 is gonna be better for taking normal images of objects and stuff like that, but if you want human subjects, and if you really want to capitalize on human subjects and take a lot of portraits and selfies and stuff like that, I think overall the iPhone does take a win there. And if you go for the iPhone 12 Pro or Pro Max, you can get the zoomed in telephoto portraits as well, so that's a plus right there. But bear in mind, the iPhone 12 in India costs more than the X60 Pro Plus, so yeah, anyways, that's just a weird case of India, but nonetheless. Let's see. The daylight images, overall I felt like the X60 gave us more accurate colors in numerous cases. As for the high resolution modes, well, there it was slightly underwhelming. I think maybe it's because I chose slightly backlit condition to take those images, so that could have been the reason why the overall detail preservation wasn't really good enough. Otherwise, I think the X60 is very impressive. It also has way better versatility than any of the iPhones to date. As for night mode, overall I prefer the X60. It just has better and more consistent night mode, and those styles preset, well, that's been my personal favorite from the moment I had used the X50 Pro last year. So yeah, the X60 Pro Plus is amazing and it has impressive cameras. Now the iPhone isn't bad or anything like that. I'm not a Apple hater or anything. I use the iPhone on the daily, but I just feel like the cameras on the iPhone 12 in particular just doesn't provide enough, you know. There's just 2 cameras. The ultra wide night mode in particular is terrible. I was really hoping that would be the new standard for ultra wide night mode. Clearly it's not. So yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do that like button, subscribe if you aren't already, and I will be seeing you guys later. Cheers.